I'm so psyched to have all you here for this panel. I'm also psyched that this is me and my wife's first panel together. I was already on a panel with Melissa De La Cruz at Y'all West, so it's awesome to see her again.
Yeah.
And it's nice to meet Rachel for the first time.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah, so in case you are wondering, this panel is called Making Out Between the Pages, and it's all about how to make out. It's all about...
They'll make out.
We're going to be talking about passion. Passion, what drives characters' passion. And I guess I can reread the... I don't want to do that. You know what? I just want to... The topic is passion. And I'm going to introduce our super amazing panelists right after I introduce myself. I'm David Yoon, and I'm married to her. And I wrote... My book is called Frankly in Love, and it's coming out on September 10th of this year. It's my debut book. I'm kind of excited. My first BookCon, my first everything. I'm like a baby. So I'm just gonna go in order. Wife, Nicola Yoon. Is #1 New York Times best-selling author of Everything, Everything, which was made into a movie. And the son is also a star, the #1 New York Times best-selling author, which was also made into a movie and also happened to be a National Book Award finalist, a Prince Honor Book, and a Coretta Scott King New Talent Award winner. And she grew up in Jamaica and Brooklyn and lives in Los Angeles, California with her daughter and me.
Hi, you guys. Thanks for coming. This is going to be wild.
Buckle up. Melissa De La Cruz. Is just, I don't know. I could read you her real bio, but that would be the whole panel. I mean, she is #1. I had to cut it down, sorry. So
I told you to. I sent David this really long one.
She's written like literally 10,000 books.
All the books at the...
All of them have been made
books.
into it. Yeah, been made into TV shows. Anyway, #1 New York Times, #1 Publishers Weekly, and #1 IndieBound best-selling author of 50 books for all ages, including titles like The Isle of the Lost, which was the prequel to The Descendants. I don't know if you've heard of that. The Blue Bloods series, and Something in Between, which was a YA contemporary novel inspired by her own immigrant experience as someone coming from the Philippines. Melissa is also the co-founder of Y'all West. And she lives in West Hollywood, California, with her husband and daughter.
Yeah.
So,
And not David and Nicola.
No. Rachel Hawkins is from Auburn. Rachel Hawkins from Auburn, Alabama. Give it up for Rachel. She's the author of 11 books, including the New York Times and USA Today best-selling Hex Hall series. Yay! Her latest books are Prince Charming and Her Royal Highness, and they feature smooching, shenanigans, and Scotland, which happen to be her 3 of Rachel's favorite things. So when she's not writing, Rachel enjoys traveling, knitting very badly, and hanging out with her truly absurd number of cats.
So many cats. How many? Too many cats. That's a lot of cats.
Alabama in the house. Okay. So yeah, making out between the pages, passion. Passion seems to me to be unique to humans. I mean, most creatures in the world kind of seem to be content with surviving and climb the tree, get the berries, eat the berries, find a place to hide, sun goes down, right? And then repeat. Why are we humans so obsessed with finding our passion and pursuing it? What do you think? Why do you think that's something unique to us? Anyone can answer. We're not going down the line or anything.
Oh.
This is like The View style.
Someone start.
You're married to him.
Tell me about passion.
Oh my God. All right. So, I mean, in all seriousness, I think the thing that makes humans unique is that we're always searching for meaning, right? We like naturally want to have a reason that we exist, right? We tell stories about ourselves, like this happened because of this, and we do that on a grand scale, right? We tell stories about our lives, and we try to find meaning, and part of meaning is finding something you're passionate about, right? Or someone that you're passionate about. So it could be your art, it could be your work, it could be your family, it could be the love of your life. You know, passion is part of telling ourselves why we're here. So I think that's why humans do it, besides the eating of the berries, which is also important.
Eat your berries.
And I think too, like it fosters connections between humans. There's nothing greater than when you're really passionate about something and you find other people who feel the same. Like that's why fandom is such a powerful force. Not always for good, but we've all been there. And that, to me, I think that's what we're always looking for too, is ways to connect with other people. And that probably goes way back in our, ancestral DNA. And so, yeah, I think that when we're passionate about things, it helps us find those other people that we can sort of connect with and say like, oh, you care about this, me too. And that's a very human thing, I think.
Tribal instinct.
Yeah,
That's cool.
and it's so weird because, I thought, writing books is my passion. I love writing and I love publishing, but this year I became the 6th grade room mom. And at first I was kind of like, oh, I don't really want to do it, but nobody wanted to do it. And I was like, okay, I'll do it because, I have one kid and I was like, this is the only chance. And I'm like, I am a passionate room mom. I plan those parties, I bring that pizza, I have the snack, And it was so funny because it fills my life in a different way and it connects me with other moms, and I said to a friend of mine, I was like, I'm so glad I'm going to be a BookCon because I forgot about my career. I have a career. I'm not just a pizza mom. So.
We lazy moms are so thankful for the moms like you, Mel, let me tell you what. Because I'm always like the one that's like, I will write you a check at the beginning of the year, please never call me again.
I'll take that check.
Forget that you know me. And yeah, so I would happily hand the check to you.
I feel that so hard.
We volunteered. For the first time this year, we volunteered at my kid's school, and they gave us like a little card after, and I was like, oh, look, they appreciate you if you do this, so maybe I'll do it some more.
Right.
Yeah, so they gave us a pin so we can have a pin collection going. This week, Viva la pins. So do you think passion is our most powerful drive as human beings? I see some human beings here. What do you think we're motivated by? Some people would say it could be greed or self-preservation or fear. What do you guys think?
I certainly want to believe that like our driving force is passion because I think that that's a beautiful thing to think of. I don't want to think of like it being just self-preservation or greed that drives us. I like to think at the end of the day that humans are inherently good people in our own way. So it's harder sometimes than others to think that, but that's what I'd like to believe. So yeah, I like to think that that's at least one of the driving forces is finding those things that we're passionate about, those people we're passionate about, and just to care and connect, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely. Somebody asked me once, what do you want most, like, in the world? Like, do you want, most things sold, whatever, material goods or whatever? And I said, you know what, I want the most love. Like, I want to be most loved. And I think, it would be good if that was something that everybody wanted. I think it would be an easier thing because it brings a lot of joy. When you think about that, you just want love. It's just about people caring about you and you caring for other people. It's not about, ambition or greed or squelching people or elbowing them. I'm talking about 6th grade politics, by the way, so.
Well, it's funny because I talk a lot about love because I write so much about love, right? And people ask, about writing YA and ask about writing love. And I feel like as a society, so many people denigrate this notion of like love stories. And it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Honestly. Like love is the thing that makes the world go round and we pretend it isn't, right? People always like, oh, it's just a love story. Oh, it's just, love is the thing. There's nothing else. Why do you get up like every day? If it's not passion, it certainly ought to be, right? It should be the thing. And I don't mean like just like being in love, although being in love is great, right? But it's love of art, it's love of work, it's love of your family and your friends. But I mean, it's the driving force, right? So, and it's a thing everybody absolutely wants and everyone is trying to get. So yeah, I mean, I think it should be passion, even if sometimes it isn't.
So that kind of sounds like if you don't get love, if you don't have a passion in your life, then bad things will pop out in other places.
Right.
So maybe
No.
the guy is greedy because he didn't have love, which is super sad to think about. So let's talk about something else.
We're not going to go down that spiral.
Bury it real deep. What is passion to you? And also, kind of crucially, what is passion not?
That's too deep, David Yoon.
We don't have that much time. We got to go deep fast.
What is passion? You guys want to
I,
start?
I think what passion is not is it's not forced. You know, it should be natural. It should be kind of automatic. I mean, you almost can't explain it. And one of the things that I would always find myself disagreeing with when I read it online, but I didn't put anything in because, you know, I'm not going to get into arguments with people online. But, you know, there's this thing about YA, you know, kind of like being mad at insta-love, you know. And I thought, have you never fallen in love? It's like so instant. It's, you know, my husband and I met at a party. 2 weeks later, he asked me to go steady, you know. And I was like, we're getting married, you know, because we were in New York and I was catching that guy. But, you know, it's almost undefinable, you know. It's like it just happens and you feel it and you feel that connection. So I don't think it's not a chore, although writing can feel like a chore sometimes. So I think there's passion and there's discipline, and I think love takes maintenance. I think, you know, it's easy to fall in love, but it's also easy to fall out of love. So there's also a lot of work, but it shouldn't be work that's hard. Like, it should be like you put into work and it's even better, you know, because when you hear about people, you know, work and then, oh, it's so hard, and then the next thing you know, oh, it's over. You know, it shouldn't be down that route. It should be, we put into work, we put into time to be with each other, to be with my writing, with my family, with my friends, and oh, it took us here, it didn't take us down there.
Yeah, I think too, like one of the things that I think is so neat about people's passions for things is that people can get, like, you don't have to just be passionate about the big things in your life. I mean, you should be. Like, I'm passionate about work, but at the end of the day, like, I'm more passionate about my life in general, like living. I always say that I was much happier as a writer once I realized that I loved writing books. My books were really important to me, but my books are the thing that let me live a life that I want to live with a little more freedom, because I do work for myself, where I can travel more, I can spend more time with my family. Those are the things that are important. If everybody forgets every book I ever read after I'm dead, like, that's cool. Like, I'm 100% fine with that. And so you don't always have to be, like I said, your passions don't always have to be like for these big things. Like, you can be just as passionate about something that seems like small or even kind of frivolous, but that's just as beautiful as being really passionate about these bigger issues. And so that's the thing to me. Passion is kind of an all-encompassing thing, you know, and it can hit very many different levels in your life.
I think one of the things that it's not is fear, right? So passion is not. Don't do things because you're afraid, right? And I think when I was a kid, like, I didn't know what I was passionate about, and I think that's okay. And I think if you're an adult right now and you don't know what you're passionate about, that's okay too. So, like, we up here, like, we like definitely have found our passion, but I looked for a long time, and it's okay if you're looking. I think the important thing is that you're looking, right? Like, don't say that it's okay, I'm just gonna live this life content or just sort of status quo. Like, if I can implore you not to do something, that's what you shouldn't do, right? So try to find something that makes you want to get up in the morning that you're passionate about, and even if it's the small thing. And don't be afraid to go for that big thing. But I spent many years being afraid to, like, write a book and, like, really go for it, put myself out there. And it worked out when I did, right? But I had to, like, just, like, and jump, right? So just do that.
Yeah, I remember we would always talk about, it's not about what you're running away from, it's what you want to run toward. And so the hard part is deciding, where do you want to go? It's a big, wide open world. Yeah, so trying lots of different things and failing or whatever, just finding whatever you love. Couldn't agree more. It's super important. I don't know. I'm always looking out for like new stuff to watch or read, because I don't know. I'm terrible at finding things, so I rely on other people. So I wanted to ask all of you, in your daily media diets, have you found any particularly passionate characters that you really identified with or admired, or just struck you lately? And it could be books or movies or anything.
Oh, I just came to BEA to talk about Normal People by Sally Rooney. Has anybody read it? It is one person in the back. You all need to buy it right now. It is a literary novel, but don't let that genre put you off, because it is a YA love story. It is so good, and it is so sad, but it's really sexy, and it's so hot. And I'm totally selling this book. You all have to read it. And
Sexy and sad is an underrated genre,
Right?
to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, I'm all for that.
Yeah, no, let's have some, sexy sad people.
Yeah.
But the character, the guy in it, Cullen, is kind of a poor boy who goes to school, and then he goes to a fancy college. But when in high school, he's hanging out with this girl Marianne, who's rich. His mom cleans her mom's house. But when they go to they have a secret love affair, and because she's unpopular. But then when they go to college, she's rich, and he's kind of the one who's, kind of on the outside. So their relationship goes through all these kind of developments, and they're like kind of cruel to each other, and there's a lot of misunderstandings, but there's a lot of love in the center of it. And I just, and the woman who wrote it is 27. She's this young, incredibly smart person, and I'm just so glad that she's writing. I love young writers. I love that there are new stories in the world, that we can fall for. And it was just about being a smart young person, and I just loved it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So-
Writing it down.
Yeah, you got it.
I've got it. I need to read it now. Now that you've told me it's sexy and sad, I'm like, oh, I'm over it. I've got it now.
Sexy sad.
Sexy sad. If there's one thing I'm very passionate about, like I've told you, travel and books and my family, but I'm also very passionate about trash. I love all trash media. I grew up in the late 80s, early 90s, so I grew up on a steady diet of Danielle Steele miniseries. I mean, I read the books and stuff too, but I was way into that. And so they don't really make those anymore, which is a real shame, quite frankly. But so I've gotten very into their sort of natural successors, which are the super trashy and fun miniseries on Stars, like The White Queen, The White Princess, The Spanish Princess, that are historical trash. I'm
all the princess
trash, which is appropriate because that's what I write. So just contemporary princess trash. Someone please put that on Amazon as my meta category.
Because you read contemporary princess trash.
Contemporary princess trash. Orange Banner. And I love those because they all are very different takes on history. I mean, I'm a big history geek too, but I don't care if it's real. On TV, if it's accurate, it doesn't matter to me. I'm whatever, tell a good story. And that's where the writer part of me trumps the history geek every time. And so the women in all of those are always so passionate and sort of fighting for family and the throne, and they're ambitious and they do bad things, but we love them anyway. And so that's one of I really like complicated ladies. And they do such a good job, I think, and it's because those shows, specifically now The White Princess and The Spanish Princess, were made completely by women. So they have a female showrunner, they have all female writers, they had mostly female directors, and I think it takes those kind of bodice rippery, trashy historical miniseries, but does something genuinely interesting with them. Not always, because it is still trash, let's be real. I'm both passionate about it, and all those characters are very passionate for all kinds of things. So yeah, I'm into it.
Awesome.
Okay, I'm gonna say a thing, and you guys are gonna think, oh, she's married to him, so that's why she's recommending this book. But I have known him, like David Yoon, since graduate school, and he's a brilliant writer, and I've known that for a long time, but now his book is coming out, and everyone is gonna know, and it's a great book.
I can't take compliments.
So that is one thing that I'm recommending. Frankly, Love is brilliant. And then the other thing that I read lately that I love is called Daisy Jones and the Six.
That's the next thing I'm reading.
It is so good. And it's like, it's one of those stories where you're like, oh, I wish I had had that idea. So it's like a history of a band, but it's like an oral history. So like each band member is talking and you're trying to figure out why they broke up. And like, God, I wish I'd had that idea. Like,
I
it's
wish
so
that
good.
album were real so
I know,
bad. Like when I was
I
reading the
know.
book, I was like, I want to pull up videos of this band on YouTube. I want the album on Spotify. I was so mad it was
I was
fake.
like, their music's gonna be good, right?
yeah.
So those are my recommendations. Frankly, Love, Daisy Jones and the Six.
I felt that way about Paris, In Paris with You by Clementine Beauvais. It's all written in prose, and I was like, oh man, prose poetry. It's just so, it's so good. And the passion is it never gets sentimental. It's always tempered by just this incredible wit and worldliness, and it's super French. You gotta read it. It's great.
Yeah, it's called In Paris with You, and
Very
it's like
French.
a YA, and she's a French author, and it's like one of those books that is flying under the radar, but it's so good that pick that one up too.
Okay, before we take questions from the audience, get your questions ready. Let's do a lightning round, yeah? Lightning round! I need graphics. Wouldn't that be awesome? So, when you were really little, when you were just little babies, what were you passionate about? It's basically like, what is your earliest memory of the thing that you were passionate about? For me, it was probably Lego.
Yeah, Barbies for sure. I like played really intense multi-character, multi-storyline. Like literally, like you guys go over here for a minute. Now we're on the B plot. So yeah, it was for
Say
sure.
the bean plot?
The B plot, yeah, like in a soap opera. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Like, yeah, it was a lot.
I was really passionate about, I remember being 3 years old, and there was this Donald Duck dress with like real ruffled sleeves that I loved, and I had to wear that little Donald Duck dress for every fancy party we went to. And then one day it wasn't in my closet anymore, and I was so upset. But yeah,
So-
I guess I was passionate about clothes and Donald
That
Duck.
sounds like cosplay to me. Yeah. No, that's cool.
I like this old toy called Capsella. Does anyone remember Capsella? No? Yes.
We have
my
a
God.
Capsella fan.
You are my person. Yeah, so it's like this, these cylinders with gears inside, and you would connect them to each other, and then you could make objects that move around the world. And I really love those. I was a science geek.
Because you're a big nerd.
I'm a nerd. Yeah,
And you're still a big nerd.
it's true.
Yeah, it's just who you are. That's cool. So we have a microphone right there, and it's hot. So why don't you, if you have questions, don't be shy. Come on up.
Yeah, don't be shy. This is our favorite part, you guys. Ask some questions.
Hi guys. First of all, thank you for coming to speak to all of us. Nicola, you mentioned that you spent like years being afraid of writing books. So what was it kind of that, like, finally the switch flipped and you were like, okay, I have to do this?
So, I mean, the reason I was afraid is that I grew up pretty poor, right? And I just did not think that writing was something you could do for a living. Like, you couldn't be happy and passionate and people would pay you. Like, it was unbelievable. Like, I didn't think that could happen. But, you know, I really did have one of those sort of epiphany moments. I had my little girl, and I was holding her one time, and she was like about 4 months old. And I thought, one day I'm going to tell her that she should be passionate about things and she should pursue it. And I realized I wasn't pursuing mine, like, because I had this job in finance that I really hated, like it sucked the soul out of my body every day I went in. And I realized that, and I was like, oh, I have to give this a shot. I just have to, otherwise, like, I'm just a hypocrite. So, yeah.
So my question is about sort of love from book to movies, and how when you wrote it, when you saw it on the big screen, like Descendants with Mal, or with Everything, or in The Sun Is Also a Star, how was it something that, did they do it as you envisioned, or did they do it better, did they do it worse? Like, I don't know if you had like a part as like a scene in that, but like, how did you like how it like happened?
So I had Witches of East End, which was based on my books, and Descendants. And I think it's just surreal because it's something that you want so much as a writer. You know, one day it'll be on the TV screen or the big screen. And when it happens, it's so weird. And it's like, oh, there's the kitchen. Oh, there's Mal with the purple hair. It's like, it's, you almost like are, you're not, and you know, you wrote the book, so, but you didn't work on the movie. So it's kind of like they took what you did and they adapted it. So it's an adaptation. So they don't really look like what you envisioned in your mind, but I liked what they did with what I'd written. I remember I told them, I was like, oh, the witches all have great hair. You know, I was like, I don't think I put in all those waves, but you know, yeah, they had great hair on that show. So it was just almost like you, and while it was happening, it was kind of not even something I could process, you know, and when it was over, that's when I was like, wow, that was really cool that happened. But it was almost, there was a gauze between me and it, you know, and, you know, I think I feel it more for other people. Like I was so excited to see Nicola's movie, Margie Stoll's movie, because they were my friends, and I was like, yes, you know, so I really felt it for them, but it was hard to feel it for myself. I don't know if that makes sense.
I mean, I think Melissa's right. It's like, it's definitely surreal. And when I'm writing, I'm definitely not thinking about a movie or like picturing the characters or anything like that. It's such a different experience. But what I like to say is that it's really nice that there's more art in the world about the characters that I've loved, right? But it's definitely different art, right? It's not the same. But I love Daniel and Natasha, and I love Maddie and Ollie, and I'd like to see more stories about them. And so in that way, it's really great. And then the whole sort of movie experience then is just, I mean, it's wild. You get to wear a big dress. My little girl was on the red carpet with us this last time. I mean, my mom has been sick, and she got to get on the red carpet. So like all that stuff around it is really cool and surreal and trippy and like wonderful. But the art part is just, you know, hey, there's more art, and that's nice.
So my question is for like anybody, like you guys can answer, but I'm just wondering like who was your like biggest inspiration for like starting to like write? Like who like was your biggest inspiration?
Yeah, I had a lot growing up. Like I was a big reader as a kid. And for me, there was actually this very like local Alabama author named Catherine Tucker Wyndham, who she wasn't even like a fiction writer. She went around like collecting ghost stories. And so there was like 13 Alabama ghosts and Jeffrey, because she had a ghost named Jeffrey in her house. This is all extremely like niche Alabama, like realness right here. And but I got to meet her when I was like 7, and she signed my book for me, and she signed it like, you know, Dear Rachel, hauntingly yours. And then she did like creepy handwriting and wrote like, and Jeffrey. And like as a 7-year-old, you couldn't tell me anything. And I remember like taking it to my parents, and I was like, a ghost signed my book. And my parents were like, you saw her do that? Like it was working through her, okay? Jeffrey goes where she goes. So yeah, that was a big one as a kid. And then when I got older, I was reading a lot of YA when I taught high school English for several years. And that's how I got into writing YA, was because I was reading what my kids were reading. And so the first authors that I started reading, because I like had burned through all the YA that existed when I was growing up, so I didn't realize that YA was so cool. But I started reading like people like Maureen Johnson and Liva Bray and Meg Cabot. And so yeah, then I was super inspired by those ladies.
Oh, that's awesome. I like the ghost thing.
Yeah. And I have it. I still have the book. It's like in a frame in my office now. Yeah.
Cool. Sorry,
I'm going to tell
go
a
ahead.
quick story, because I write love stories because of the Poltergeist, right? So do you guys remember that old movie, Truly Terrifying? Okay, so I saw that in Jamaica when I was like 8. So way too young to see this, right? And then I was staying at my aunt's house, and I was sleeping in her bed, and outside the window there was a tree much like the tree in Poltergeist, and I was convinced it was gonna bust through the window and eat me, just like it did in Poltergeist. So I got off the bed and I went underneath the bed, and I found my aunt's stash of Harlequin romances. And I read them, like I read a lot of them. I didn't understand anything, but they were like heaving bosoms. Gorgeous mounds of flesh. It was absurd. But I was hooked, like I didn't understand anything, but I was like, I love this. And so the reason I write books with love in it is because of Poltergeist.
So inappropriate.
Yeah, no, I was 11 years old and I read a series called Sweet Valley High. And I read an article when I was 11 about the women who wrote Sweet Valley High. So Francine Pascal, who created it, was in her 30s, but the writers who actually had their names not in the front cover but in the flap were 3 of her ghostwriters, although their names were on the books, and they were 22 years old. And I remember thinking, I'm 11, they're 22, in 11 years, maybe I'll be able to write these books. You know, it seemed like a profession, because until then I thought all authors were 90 years old or dead.
Thank you.
Hello, I've got a quick comment and a question. My comment is I've been a school librarian for almost 30 years, and I have to tell you
Librarians.
thank you. One to go. But I have to tell you that there is nothing better in all of that time than to have a kid find a book that speaks to them and changes their life. So thank you to you, and thank you to all the other authors out there. Children's and teen book. I wasn't supposed to do that. But here we go. Here's now the question. Okay. In about a week and a half, I get to teach a workshop to other librarians and teachers, and it's called Kick-Ass Girls in YA Literature, okay? So I want to recommend one of each of your books in that workshop. Can you tell me which one I should recommend for each of you?
Oh, yeah. For me, it's easy because I have a book about a superhero girl, a debutante turned superhero, that old story, called Rebel Belle. So it's Rebel Belle, B-E-L-L-E, and that would be my kick-ass girl.
All right, thank you.
I wrote about Alexander Hamilton and Elizabeth Schuyler in a series called ALEX ELIZA, and the series focuses on Elizabeth Schuyler because I wanted to write about somebody who was American and kind and decent and just kind of embodied like our values in a really good way. So I wanted to write about a kind person. So she's my kick-ass girl.
And I'll say Natasha from The Sun Is Also a Star because she is a science geek and she does not believe in love, and you have to convince her.
Thank you. Keep doing what you're doing, please.
Thank you. You keep doing what you're doing.
Hi. Before I ask my question, I just want to say to Nicola, I really appreciated you writing The Sun Is Also a Star. My mother is Trinidadian and my boyfriend is Filipino, so I definitely related to the story so much.
Yay, I'm so glad.
And I saw it with him and I made him cry, and I was, oh my gosh, I was so happy.
I love that.
Because he was like, it's not gonna affect me, I'm good. And then I just saw him wipe his tear away. It was amazing. But my question is, love is something that's so complex and it's something that's so individual to everybody that experiences it. How do you guys portray that in your work in a way that still holds to like the dignity of what falling in love is like, but then, you know, it's still real, as in you can see like the flirting and all the stages. Like, how do you just stay true to what love actually is?
Okay, I'll start. You know, I mean, I have a really good memory of like being a 16-year-old and like the awkwardness of it, of like having crushes. So I think that part I can just sort of channel. And also, I'm totally in love with my husband, so I can really channel that part. But I mean, honestly, I think like writing about anything is about being empathetic, right? And I think that honestly is the job of writing, is to be empathetic and to like really put yourself in someone else's shoes and live in their lives, and really try to understand, even someone you think you hate or someone who you think is so different than you, right? So I think empathy is the job, right? And so I think, you know, love is part of that, right? I mean, all human beings need love, right? And they need to find connection. And so I think when you approach it from that perspective, it doesn't matter actually what you're writing about, as long as you can really take the time to put yourself in someone else's head, and, you know, really treat them as a human being, then everything else comes from that.
Yeah, I think, yeah, just to go off what Nicola said, like the same sort of thing, like it's about being empathetic. And it's in your character work too, you know, when you create these people, when you're telling a romance, you want people who complement each other, who challenge each other. And so when you're doing that kind of like deep character work, like it's a big part of how you write sort of a love story. Also, like on a much shallower note, when it comes to writing love stories, I love a trope. I'm all about some tropey goodness. And a fun thing sometimes to do is to take a trope and do something different with it, to like gender flip it. Usually I've discovered like really changes the game and lets you get to like some deeper and more interesting places. So like if you're ever trying to write a love story and you feel kind of stuck, be like, well, what's a trope that I love? Do I love enemies to lovers? Do I love like rich guy, poor girl? Like what is it? And then find a way to flip it, because that's always fun.
No, I think it is, you know, there's this specific experience in our lives, and then you kind of translate into this universal thing. And, you know, when Nicola's saying she's so in love with her husband, I'm like, yeah, I've been writing about our relationship in 50 books. Like, you know, no matter what they look like, or like it's stuff that we've said to each other, it's stuff that we've experienced, you know. And I remember at one point, I was on my 16th book, I'm like, I'm also running out of ex-boyfriends looks. You know? I'm like, I've written about everybody at this point.
Time to start writing about pets.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
That's a great question, thanks.
Hello, everyone. We're here talking about passion, and one really cool thing that happens when you create something and put it out into the world is that other people might react passionately. So I'm wondering if you guys have any favorite memories around someone else reacting to your works.
I do have one, actually. I was at a book event, and I'm not going to remember what event it was, but there was this Chinese-American man, and he was maybe late 40s, early 50s, and he had just read The Sun Is Also a Star. And he came up to me, and like it was a normal interaction at the beginning, and he's like, you know, the Asian boy never gets the girl. And
This one made me cry.
yeah. And so we were talking about it, and then he started crying, and then I started crying, and people in the line started crying, and it was a thing. But it really meant a lot to me. It was just like, it's true, and why not? Why don't they get the girl? There's super hot Asian boys in this world. They should get the girl. Yeah.
Yeah, I think anytime like anybody does something creative for one of my books has been like my favorite thing. If you tweet me and you're like, here's my fan art, here's the playlist I made, you know, if there's fanfic or whatever, like, because that's how I respond to things that I like. I write fanfic. Even now, like as a professional author, I'm still like, oh, I like that thing, I'm gonna play with it. I'm gonna bury it way deep under a fake name, but I'm gonna play with it. And I love to make playlists for things. If you follow me on Twitter, like I talk about making highly specific Spotify playlists. I actually have one for you, Mel. It's called Sexy and Sad featuring Cold, which is all like very like songs for like making out when you're depressed.
All right.
I'll send it to you.
over.
I'll send it to you. So yeah, so anything like that makes me just really happy, because it feels like somebody, it's like when you're writing a book, you know, you're there in your sandbox, like building your castle, and it's like somebody else got in there and they're like, can I put this dinosaur on it? And you're like, yeah, sure, go for it. So I don't know, it's like a very like community kind of feeling that I love. So that always makes me really happy.
One thing that I always remembered, I was writing the Blue Blood series, which is a teen vampire, you know, kind of girl hero series, and I got an email from a platoon in Afghanistan, and they had said that somebody had sent them, you know, the first book, and they loved it, and it was a bunch of young men, and could I send them the rest of the series because they want to know how it ends. And I was like, oh my God, of course. So I sent it to them all the way up to book 7, you know, and I was just really kind of moved because, you know, you don't think of those readers are your readers, but they said they really felt like the hero's journey was something that they were doing, and they really felt for the passion and, you know, the heroism, the bravery and the courage of the characters, and they related to it. So I always remember that. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, wasn't
It's
that
kind
crazy?
of adorable too. Yeah, like they just need to know what happens.
Yeah.
I need to add something. I don't have that many fans yet. But I was at like a sales dinner with all the penguins. That's what we call people who work at Penguin. And this one, you know, rep he's Chinese American, and he's married to this white girl, and we just start talking about it. He's like, your book meant so much to me. My own parents, they haven't accepted my wife yet, and then he just kind of stopped, and he got that look on his face, just that like lost look, and he started crying, and I was like, dude, I feel you so hard. Not only because your parents, don't accept this person who's extremely important to you, but the fact that, what are you, in your 30s? And I'm in my 40s, and we're still talking about our parents. How can this be?
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, I know, totally. They have this weird grip on me. As much as we pretend that we're individuals and we don't need them anymore, we do need them, and they need us. And it's a tough thing to realize, and it takes some people their whole life to understand that and really come to terms with it. And so yeah, we bonded pretty hard that night. That table was like the emotional table. Everyone else at the party's like, what's going on at that table? We're all hugging and crying. Yeah, so that was pretty awesome. We actually have about 3 minutes left, so if anyone wants to just scream out something.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
We'll get that. Yeah, we'll get it. Awesome. Yes, yeah.
Congratulations.
And I just want to say to Nicola, I love the Sun and also Star so much.
Thank you.
Natasha was like literally one of the first characters that I related to so much coming to now and dealing with the stuff that she was dealing with both because of the stuff also that they had went through.
Oh, man.
Thank you.
That was
Really
awesome.
glad.
So if you couldn't hear her, she said she loved Sun Is Also Star because it was about someone coming from the islands and dealing with a lot of stuff that she also had to deal with personally. So very cool.
My life is a funny cat story. I'm trying to think, like the last time Nessie did anything. Nessie's just like I love that my cats have fans, first of all. This is amazing. There are 5, Zelda, Nessie, Daenerys, and now Merlin and Bosworth. I wasn't even sad that Daenerys went bad on Game of Thrones, because I was like, it's fine that I named my cat after that then. That my cat would do this. So that it was all good. But yeah, no, Nessie is now like the grumpy old man of the house, so mostly he just wanders around and like flinches at the kittens running around, who we still call the kittens or the babies, even though they're about a year old now. But now we understand, because we only have one kid. We say that as much as we now spoil our kittens, we're like, this is why youngest children are like this. Now we know, like, we're doing it to the cats, so yeah. But yeah, it's just constant funny cat stories at my house, basically. Follow me on Instagram for more exciting cat content. That's my brand these days.
It's like, Dracarys.
Yeah, Dracarys, she would. She's the meanest cat in the entire world. She's our smallest cat and our meanest, so yeah, it makes sense, it all worked out.
Okay, we got like 60 seconds for more random shout-outs. Yes, my editor.
How do you name your characters?
Should we tell them?
I use baby name websites, which really freaks out my husband.
I steal people's names, and then I turn them. I have a friend named Skylar, and I turned him into a girl. Oh well.
I mean, sometimes they name themselves. Sometimes they just like pop into your head named. And Sun Is Also a Star. The character Natasha starts with an N. My name starts with an N. Daniel starts with a D. David starts with a D. So I mean, honestly, like some of it's just
Coincidence.
yeah.
I personally like really stupid names. The stupider the better. Like in Frank Lee, first name is Frank Lee. Frank Lee. And there's a calculus teacher in that book who has a very soft voice, so I called him Mr. Very Soft. So stupid, right? I love stupid names. I have my own company and I call it Yoon Co, which I love. Like Ron Co, the guy who makes the rotisserie show. He named it after himself. Ron Co, I love it. So dumb. I think we might be done. Oh wait, one more. Okay, last one.
You guys, when you're writing a new story, do you find it easier to outline or do you just start writing?
I just start writing, much to my peril a lot of the time, but that's how I do. Yeah.
I'm an outliner. I outline.
Yeah, I do a loose outline, so like nothing, I can't, if I fill in all the blanks, then I won't write it because I know how the story goes. So it's like loose-ish, you know, like 3-act structure, some bullet points, and then make it up as you go.
What do we call that? Plotters and
Plotters,
pantsers?
pantsers.
Versus pantsers.
Most
So-
people are in between, honestly.
So pantser, plotter, pantser. All right. I think we're out of time, but thank you guys so much.